Thank you all for having me here. It's been a very interesting day talking about AI. These are really, extremely amazing times that we live in. The rate of progress in the last year has been incredible. And this gives rise to all kinds of new thoughts and new ideas and new ways that things may change. And I just want to talk about this really from my little corner of the world, which is the Wikipedia world. And to do that, I'll first start just giving you a little bit of the history of Wikipedia and where we are today, just to sort of put this into context. So I originally set up Wikipedia in 2001, and the original vision for Wikipedia is for all of us to imagine a world in which every single person on the planet is given free access to the sum of all human knowledge. And that's what we're doing at Wikipedia. Every element of that is important. So when we say every single person on the planet, we're inherently global. We're multilingual in our outlook. Free access means both it doesn't cost anything to access Wikipedia, and never will, but also that the content in Wikipedia can be reused and repurposed. It's under a free license, so you're allowed to take it and do just about anything you want with it. And the sum of all human knowledge, which means that Wikipedia is an encyclopedia. So that's, it's not a wide open free speech forum, it's not a chat forum, it's a very specific type of work, which is the encyclopedia. So the popularity of Wikipedia, of course, people know quite a lot about this because everyone's using Wikipedia, but we have 274 billion page views a year, which is up 12.5%. In the last year, 306 million edits per year, which is up 51%. In the English language alone, we get 115 billion page views. And then we can go to look at the size of Wikipedia. We have 318 active Wikipedia languages. Now, these languages vary in size, obviously. So English Wikipedia being the largest, but some of the languages, some of the smaller languages of Africa, of India, they'll just have a very small community. They may have 100 articles or 1,000 articles. They're just getting started. And we have over 100 more languages in the incubator. So this is a separate side project where people can come and start a little bit of work in their own language and start to build a community before we approve a fuller Wikipedia. In English, there are 6.6 million articles. And in Romanian, as of this morning, 439,265 articles. So this is big, 439,000. I remember it was a very exciting moment when English Wikipedia passed 100,000, and then I remember a few years later it was very exciting when German Wikipedia passed 100,000. And nowadays we hardly celebrate that kind of milestone, but we will be celebrating a milestone of 500,000 entries in Romanian very soon. We've got 60.5 million articles across all the active languages. So what is interesting about that is if you look, English is just barely over 10% of the work in Wikipedia. So people who are mainly reading English Wikipedia don't realize the enormous volume of content in many, many other languages. One little interesting thing, I'm not sure how accurate this is, but according to our internal stats that I looked at this morning, English Wikipedia is slightly more popular in Romania than Romanian Wikipedia. Only slightly, but that's interesting. But it does tell you what happens in a very, in a country like Romania, which is quite open and sort of worldly and world-facing. English Wikipedia is so much larger that people do find it convenient to go there because not everything will be in Romanian Wikipedia. But I think this will shift as that Romanian language grows. So one of the amazing things about us is that we are a charity. So the Wikimedia Foundation is the charity that I set up that owns and operates Wikipedia. So unlike every other famous internet site founder, I am not a billionaire, but that's okay. My life is very interesting. We're a relatively small organization. We have about 700 staff and contractors working for the foundation. And the staff works on mainly software product development, site operations, finance, accounting, legal, fundraising, communications, trust and safety. So what you don't see here is they don't work on the encyclopedia. And this is really important to understand. The staff don't generally work on content, and they don't generally do user moderation. Now, Trust and Safety is a group within the foundation that does work on user moderation whenever there's something that's too difficult for the community to handle, too complicated, that sort of thing. They do help the community, but the bulk of everything that's done on the site, including user moderation, is done by the community. So it's pretty unusual. So what is a wiki? A wiki is essentially a website that anyone can edit. Wikis tend to be very, very open. Anybody can join, anybody can edit. And when you edit Wikipedia, your edit typically goes live immediately, which is pretty crazy, but we've been doing it this way for a long time and it works out really well. There are community moderation mechanisms. So the staff aren't generally doing this, but the community has a lot of processes, procedures, tools at their disposal so that they can control the environment and make sure that trolls don't take over, make sure that people are using quality sources and all of that. A wiki is not a wide open free speech forum. We're trying to achieve a particular purpose, and that's what we're doing. So the rise of wikis over time, Ward Cunningham invented the first wiki in 1994. It was called WikiWeb, and wikis remained a very small underground phenomenon for many, many years. And one of the reasons was most of the wikis that were out there before Wikipedia, they didn't save any history. So it was a web page, you can come and edit it, and you changed it, and then if you changed it more than 2 or 3 times, the oldest version was just erased. So clearly this was almost like vulnerability as a performance art, because you couldn't really build an encyclopedia that way. Anybody could come and destroy it at any time. So that was a fun little kind of side thing that people were doing. And I realized, like, you know what, if we kept the whole history, then if somebody comes in and damages something, it's easy to fix. You just revert to the old version. So I started Wikipedia in 2001. I started Fandom, which is my for-profit wiki company, in 2004. Fandom is now something like the number 20 website on the internet. And Wikipedia is the 5th most popular. So Wikipedia reached 1 million articles in 2006, but you can see by now it's much, much bigger. So now let's talk about AI. So first of all, I'm just going to say a few general words about AI. I'm not going to read you this whole thing. You've been here all day learning and listening about AI. The important thing is AI is, simulation of human intelligence processes. And this can be all kinds of things. I'm going to focus mainly on generative AI for text. But this is nothing new. We've been slowly increasing the ability for machines to, in some limited and narrow ways, imitate the intelligence of humans. So famous early things that we don't normally necessarily think of as AI, but which can be considered AI, would be, for example, playing chess. So the first computers that were able to beat Garry Kasparov in chess, that was a huge kind of transition moment. That didn't mean, your phone still, is really stupid, but it could probably beat you in chess if you downloaded the right app. But that's a very narrow bit of human intelligence. And there's all kinds of things. But now there's the new kid on the block, generative AI. And so this has really exploded into the public consciousness since late last year, when suddenly people got access to ChatGPT and started to play with it and realized, wow, this is actually materially different from things we've seen in the past. What we're seeing from generative AI right now takes many different forms. So text to image, so things like Stable Diffusion, DALL-E, there's some others. Midjourney, I think, is probably the best at the moment. Basically, this is very simple. You can, type, describe a picture, and then from the words, it creates an image out of that picture. It's really cool. It's really fun. It's really kind of broken in certain ways. So most of these are really bad at drawing, for example, human hands. They'll have 6 fingers or whatever. It's kind of weird and creepy looking. But for certain kind of images, they're really beautiful and really amazing. And that work is proceeding very, very quickly. There's huge hobbyist communities who are improving and working and growing that all the time. And then text to text. So ChatGPT, Bard, these are the things that have really caught my attention and have caught the attention of many, many people, because you can see suddenly you're able to have a conversation with a machine that is really a huge step forward from anything that we ever saw in the past. And this means a whole world of possibilities is coming very, very fast. So today I'm going to focus mainly on ChatGPT and Bard because I'm going to talk about what is the impact of this technology for the knowledge ecosystem and for Wikipedia in particular. So what is the role of generative AI in content creation? So I use content creation in the very broadest sense. You can now type a short prompt and get some long text out. So things are possible today that were not even remotely possible 1 year ago. It's a big breakthrough, it's gonna have a lot of consequences, but how good is it? So this is the first thing to understand. How good is ChatGPT, and in particular, is it good enough to write a Wikipedia entry? So I have this sort of a fun hobby that I have. My wife is 𝐤𝐧𝐞𝐫𝐚𝐭. She is not a famous person, but she's been in the press some. She worked for Tony Blair when he was at number 10 Downing Street. She's done interesting things, so she's not a famous person, but you can find some information about her online. So I always love to ask every day, now I've gotten bored of it now, but generally was asking every day, who is 𝐤𝐧𝐞𝐫𝐚𝐭? So if I ask ChatGPT, who is 𝐤𝐧𝐞𝐫𝐚𝐭? 𝐤𝐧𝐞𝐫𝐚𝐭 is a British businesswoman and entrepreneur. She's the co-founder and CEO of Sisterhood, a women's networking platform. This isn't true. She's a co-founder of Project Everyone, promoting the Sustainable Development Goals. But still, she set up a nonprofit that promotes something. Says she worked for Gordon and Sarah Brown. I don't know if you know much about UK politics, but generally, if you worked for Tony Blair, you didn't work for Gordon Brown, so that's not true. Anyway, the point is, this is all vaguely plausible. Here's another version, British businesswoman and entrepreneur, best known for her work, founder and CEO of the personal styling and fashion company, Trouser London. Completely false. This, that, and the other, Tony Blair Faith Foundation. Says she was director of strategy and communications for former Prime Minister Tony Blair. That's a promotion. That was not her job for Tony. She's like, okay, that sounds good. But this is fun, but it's not nearly as fun as what comes next, which is, my next question is always, who did she marry? 𝐤𝐧𝐞𝐫𝐚𝐭 is married to Peter Kellner, a journalist and political commentator. Who did she marry? 𝐤𝐧𝐞𝐫𝐚𝐭 is married to Patrick Rock, a former Conservative Party advisor. Again, very surprising, as she is definitely Labour Party. And then here's another one. Who did she marry? 𝐤𝐧𝐞𝐫𝐚𝐭 is married to Tom Bradby, a British journalist and broadcaster. So what's interesting about all of these is all three of these are somehow plausible. They are people who are political journalists. She worked in politics. She's a known person in that world. It's all like sort of, it's a social group that she could potentially have run into and married some of them, but she didn't. So the real question is, okay, but this is, I admit, this is ChatGPT 3.5. Okay, so it had a lot of problems. The real question is, ChatGPT 4, did it help? How much better is it now? The only thing I can say about that is, 𝐤𝐧𝐞𝐫𝐚𝐭 was married to Patrick Arnold, a professional DJ. He sounds a lot cooler than the other guys. So you could consider that positive. They were going to get married in 2021, but the wedding was disrupted by the COVID pandemic. I mean, we've been married since 2010, and we have 2 children and so on. So it's all very, very interesting, but you can see, if you wanted to use this technology to say, and by the way, there is a Wikipedia entry about her. It's not very long. It's got some basic correct facts of her career. And I actually once got into an argument with it. I'm like, I think this is wrong. Where did you get this information? It said, oh, I got it from Wikipedia. Well, I went back through the entire history of her article because she's married to me. There have been a few cases where her entry was vandalized. You know, she's married to an idiot, you know, whatever, people attacking me. Anyway, none of this is in Wikipedia, like it's completely made up out of thin air. So this is fun, but it also tells you why I'm not worried or why I'm not excited to think, oh, now we can just write Wikipedia entries with a machine. It's very, very far from being able to do that, and it's just fundamental to how it works. So the current weaknesses of generative AI is it has a tendency to make things up out of thin air, including, by the way, references. So this is really important. One of my things I said, I asked, well, when she married Tom Parker Bowles, who's related to the royal family, I said, oh, well, that must have been in the press a lot. Oh, yes, there was a lot of press coverage. Can you give me the URLs for that press coverage? Yes, here's The Guardian, Telegraph, so on. Click all the URLs, 404 not found. It just made them up out of its head. the issue here is that very plausible text that is wrong is in some ways worse than completely wild stuff that's obviously false. So this entry, right, when I look at this, I say, oh, this is completely wild, it's kind of hilarious, it made this up. But anyone in this room, well, not now you'll know who my wife is married to, but if you had typed, who is Kate Garvey, you would have found some very plausible information. You say, oh yeah, I remember she was in politics and I know she's doing some nonprofit thing now. It's very plausible, and that's actually quite dangerous compared to if it said, you know, she's Martian or something like this. So, all right, so generative AI versus Wikipedia. Generative AI can create plausible text, but it does so with a pretty simple idea. So basically what they've done is it ingests huge amounts of text, and then it's a very complicated but probability model predicting which word might come next given what's come before. So you start with some sentences of a question, and then it asks itself, oh, what would be a typical answer to something like that? And it just starts generating word after word after word. And there's a little bit of randomness in it because they want it to be sort of varied and there's no simple answer to everything. In fact, if you choose the most probable word every time, the text ends up being very bland and not very interesting. By choosing a little bit of randomness, it actually gives much better results, which is an interesting side effect. But it doesn't actually understand anything. It looks impressive, but it actually isn't all that impressive when you go deep, and the Wikipedians always go deep. We're very passionate about really digging in, really understanding the source, really trying to get it right. Humans discuss and debate and rediscuss and redebate everything in Wikipedia, always striving to make it better. Sometimes people say to me, oh, well, has your community ever thought about, and I just say, stop you right there. Has our community ever thought about X? I don't care what X is, the answer is yes. There's probably like a 40-page discussion of it. We are a bunch of geeks who talk about everything, explore everything, chew on ideas constantly. And so we're very, very interested in this. So what are some of the threats of generative AI? So this is not threats necessarily for Wikipedia, but in the world. Generation of plausible text will have negative impact. There'll be a lot of low-quality content sites built by simply having a model fill pages and pages with plausible text. So give an example. So during Donald Trump's first campaign to run for president, this is kind of a peak time of the original sort of fake news. And I don't mean Donald Trump calls everything fake news he doesn't like, but I mean actual fake news was a real thing. And I saw an article that said, Pope endorses Trump, which was kind of surprising because the Pope doesn't usually endorse political candidates, and the current Pope, whatever you may think about him, he seems like a nice guy who probably wouldn't endorse Donald Trump. And so it was fake, but also it was on a fake website that only had one article. But still, it was enough to trick people into tweeting it, sharing it. It fooled some people, but it wouldn't fool Wikipedians who would quickly say, oh, this is like, it's called like the Denver Guardian. We say, that sounds like a newspaper. Denver is a city in America. Guardian, everybody's heard of the Guardian newspaper in London. Denver Guardian could be a newspaper. It's not a newspaper. It's completely made up. However, now, instead of one person making up a name and writing one site, they can actually create thousands and thousands. They can actually copy news websites, rewrite them at scale, and make a very plausible looking website and then sneak in disinformation somewhere. So that's one thing. Another idea, higher quality spam emails customized to the reader. So most of the spam email you get is just nonsense, right? It's not very interesting. But imagine if an AI can actually access your Facebook profile, likes, dislikes, know a little bit about you, and then write a sales email to you trying to trick you into clicking something or to doing something. That becomes suddenly possible in a way that you couldn't have really done it except for on a one-person basis. So, you know, someone who knows about your family, things like this, which of course has been possible for many years, but it's just really expensive for low-grade spammers to go around, you know, target some random person, figure out who their family are, write a convincing email. Now you can just do it, millions at scale, and I think we'll see that. And then finally, the generation of deep fake voices, that's another generative AI technology, will surely cause problems for at least a short period of time. And what I mean by this has been around for a while, the ability to do, you know, I was on a call with Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, and he played me a little clip of Barack Obama speaking, reading, I think it was an Abraham Lincoln quote. and it sounded like Barack Obama. And I said, okay, but that's not impressive. I've seen that 3 years ago. Why? He said, now I want you to speak for 30 seconds, only 30 seconds. They recorded my voice and instantly played the same quote back in my voice, and it was pretty good. So that is a big difference. So the ability to train on hundreds of hours of some famous person's voice and mimic their voice, okay, that's interesting. That's got a lot of potential downsides. But the ability to train on everyone's voice, that's huge and scary. Because, you know, this voice that I heard, it probably wouldn't fool my wife. It might fool my elderly mother. Probably wouldn't fool my mom. It might fool my dad, who's got dementia. It definitely might fool my banker or my accountant. And so suddenly the ability to mimic anyone's voice and get them to say anything you want, that's got huge downsides. They're not releasing that at OpenAI because they see the downsides, but they are also like, we got there first on this. You know, we know other people are going to get there very, very soon. So that's some things. So what about a threat to wiki? So let me just take this one off the table right up front. There's no threat at the present time that generative AI can trick Wikipedians directly. We really insist on reliable sources for everything. Making up random stuff just won't work. So if somebody uses an AI to come to Wikipedia and start to edit, for example, the biography of 𝐘𝐧𝐞𝐫𝐚𝐭, they're just going to get blocked very quickly because people are going to look at it and say, this is nonsense, the sources don't match and all that. And all the major players are working on grounding. So what they mean by grounding is explaining where the AI got the information. So we think this will actually lead to more links to Wikipedia than anywhere else because Wikipedia is by far the largest body of work that generative AI is training on. So we think, just from a website point of view, we actually think as these come online more and more, already like Bing is citing sources and so on, we think that's going to drive a huge amount of traffic to us. So we're not really that worried about the traffic. But here's where it gets interesting. Generative AI, my time is up, but I'm only to the interesting part, but I promise I'll make it quick. I foresee many use cases where generative AI is going to mean powerful new tools for our community. So just going to throw out a few ideas that we've been discussing. So finding contradictions between Wikipedia entries. So you can imagine, sometimes we'll have an article about, let's say we have an article about Google and an article about Sundar, the CEO of Google. And what if one of them says he started working there in 2010 and the other one says he started working there in 2012? So we've contradicted ourselves. Now humans can notice that and find it, but you have to go and look for it. You have to get lucky to happen to, oh, I just read something different a second ago. We can actually use AI to feed it related Wikipedia entries and ask, do you see any contradictions? And it's actually pretty good at finding those. Quickly finding cases where our text contradicts a source. So we're not doing this yet, but it's an obvious case where you can say, look, here's a Wikipedia entry. It has 50 sources. I'm going to feed you the Wikipedia entry and the 50 sources and tell me if, does Wikipedia contradict the source in any place? And if it does, okay, a human needs to look at it. We wouldn't trust the AI because it makes stuff up. But how good does it need to be? It doesn't have to be perfect. That's what's really important here. If 80% of the time when it says, hey, I think there's a problem here, and then a human looks at it and says, oh yeah, that was a problem, that's a valuable tool that will help our community find mistakes, find errors. Another example, assess vast number of articles for potential bias. Wikipedia tries really hard to be neutral, to be not biased, but of course, we're human beings, people have an interest. What I always say is, the worst bias in Wikipedia is not in the areas you might worry about, because those generally will have enough people on both sides focused on the issue. But like if you read our articles about Japanese anime in English Wikipedia, they are very, very positive about Japanese anime because literally nobody reads or writes those except for anime fans because nobody else cares. And so those can be quite biased. AI might be able to sort of detect that and say, oh, this uses a lot of hyped up language, that sort of thing. So we're interested in these kinds of things. Help with filling in stubs on obscure subjects by extracting facts from human approved sources. So let's say the short article on 𝐘𝐧𝐞𝐫𝐚𝐭 is there. What if I go and I find 4 or 5 new sources and just say to the AI, can you find some facts that are in these sources that aren't in the article already? It tells me that, and then it just speeds my work as a human of saying, oh, here's something I can add, here's something I can do. So, and then, last, a significantly enhanced on-site search experience. So here's a question you might have. Why do ducks fly south for winter? Okay, is the answer to that in Wikipedia? Well, of course it is, but where? Well, it's probably an article on ducks. I think there's an article on bird migration. You might have to dig. You might have to read a long entry about birds, which has got all kinds of information you're not interested in at the moment. Or the AI can just extract that paragraph for you and answer your question. And that is very doable today. Now, we can't do it. We don't have the resources yet. But we've got our development, machine learning team is working on that and thinking about that. And suddenly that's just like a very useful tool for people to be able to find what they're looking for in Wikipedia. AI and content moderation. Wikipedia doesn't really have a scaling issue with content moderation. The community naturally scales, so the community looks after each other. If somebody's being a jerk, somebody else will notice, they'll get banned or whatever. But with social media, top-down approach is what they use, and it doesn't scale. And so I see some real opportunities here for content moderation. Actually, one of the areas that I think is interesting, we've had sentiment analysis for many years, so that's pretty easy. You type your Facebook post and you hit send, and then a machine can look at it and say, ooh, this sounds angry, okay? That actually works reasonably well, even before generative AI. But now you can imagine the generative AI might say, your post sounds quite angry. If you meant that, go ahead, send it, whatever, not your mom. But here's a rewritten version that sounds a little nicer. Would you prefer to post that? And I think that would help a lot of us. I mean, I think many people have sent an angry email, maybe after a couple too many drinks that you probably shouldn't have sent. It'd be kind of helpful if it said, hey, it's late at night, maybe you might want to be a little nicer. So the path to coexistence, the one thing I wanted to say is we are currently seeing hastily prepared and proposed legislation in Europe which may destroy the emerging tech sector in Europe. No actual benefit to user safety, human health and happiness. It's insane. I'm sure other people may have talked today in a very positive way about the forthcoming AI Act in the EU. Having looked into it, it's really badly written and it's no good and it's got to be stopped. We probably won't be stopped, and hence we'll have a big damage to AI in here. The other thing to know is that it's here, it exists. This is not the domain of just a handful of companies. So you might think you can regulate something. It's like, well, only Google, Facebook, OpenAI, Apple, you name the internet giants who have enough money. You can regulate those companies. They're big companies and they kind of have to do what you say, but it's already out there. Models have been leaked, the data's out there. Already the open source community is making incredibly rapid advances. In fact, there was a leaked memo from someone in Google saying, we have no moat, meaning we have no defense. Like basically, the open source community out there is moving faster than we are. And so, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I don't know, but it's a thing. Like, it's just fact. And so the idea is that the big players currently don't have a huge advantage over everybody else. And that's got a lot of implications. So we have to coexist with AI technology. There's no pausing, there's no slowing down. That genie's out of the bottle. That's that. So I personally think this is great news. I don't like a world in which a handful of companies control the most powerful intellectual technology. I like that it's really open and that lots of clever and interesting people are going to do interesting things, but it has some downsides.